and drink culture, making memories to keep, sharing stories, recipes, life's little dreams. On making beans, we spill the means. From kitchen to table, hospitality bright, flavors of the world dancing in the light, sipping, brewing, tasting fine, making beans, it's our time. Tune in, folks, we're taking a ride for culinary tales far and wide. We're talking food, we're talking drink, making beans you'll never want to blink.
We are here with Making Beans podcast. I'm your host, Chef John Wayne. Let's get cooking. Today's episode, Gluten, Foodies, and the Arts. Let's welcome my dear friend, Rita DiPasquale, a professional foodie, artist, and appraiser and authenticator of fine art, now residing in New Orleans. Rita, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Good to see you. It's been a little while.
It's been a while, yeah.
But I guess let's start, a little bit at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about you and your food journey.
Well, obviously, growing up in Italy, food was always at the center of family and growing up, and it's a big part of our culture, which you know. And it was when I was 17 that my cousin told me about slow food in Rome, and that he was part of putting that together or starting it, the movement back in the day. So that's when I joined the Rome chapter when I was 17. And he was taking me to farm to table events where basically, I don't know how you would describe them here in the United States, but they were places where you could go and lodge, and these farms, you could go and stay, and you would only eat whatever came off the farm.
Mm-hmm.
And also the local wines from that region would be provided. And
Is it kind of like the out in the field type
yeah,
stuff?
There's a
like that.
word in Italian, agricoltura, and it's basically an agricultural B&B where again, you eat off the land, and the wine and spirits, even like their amaros or their limoncellos or whatever liqueur from that region that they are known for, would be brought in for each meal. And of course,
awesome.
every course would have been paired with the appropriate wine.
Mm-hmm.
So it became just sort of part of my DNA at a very young age.
Right.
We had, when I moved to Cleveland, we had a slow food chapter that was run by Fred and Linda Griffith. And Fred Griffith had a TV show, I think it was called Good Morning Cleveland or something like that. So he was pretty well known, and it was a pretty decent sized chapter. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of very food conscious people in Cleveland wanting to know how to source more locally, how to cook their own food and get away from fast food and, sort of eating in front of the TV and everybody not really sitting down at the table anymore, which was the premise of slow food. So it went on for a while, and I participated heavily in that. And then both unfortunately, Linda and Fred fell ill. Fred first, Linda then was taking care of him. And then Linda fell ill, and pretty much the slow food chapter sort of dissipated. There were three of us, myself, Kay, Ryan Dale, and Missy Schroeder, that were part of slow food, that wanted to fill this vacuum, this void. So we just started with this Facebook group called Neo Foodies, this Facebook group called
Neo Foodies, yeah. Okay.
And it started really small, and a lot of the local chefs were also part of slow food. We basically approached the whole roster and said, hey, come over and join us on Neo Foodies. It's free. We're basically going to continue to offer the same content and keep this foodie movement going.
That's great.
And it just grew from there. I mean, as you know, when we talked about it many, many years ago, when it was still relatively it was just starting to get heated up over there, picking and getting momentum. And it grew exponentially where I didn't even realize that nationwide people were becoming familiar with our group. And
Right.
we started having chefs from all over, including Italy, become members.
Hmm.
And it was a great thing to be a part of, and I still am. We've just started the Ennio Foodie New Orleans chapter down here
Oh, great.
in conjunction with Slow Food New Orleans.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
they do like the bigger farm to table,
Hmm.
and I'm starting hosting these smaller events with local restaurants that source locally, and introducing people to these new and upcoming places that are popping up in the city.
Oh, that's great. Good stuff. So, how big did Neo Foodies get?
At
It's one of the
one
biggest in the country, right?
Yeah, at one point, we still are considered probably one of the largest food groups in the country. At
Wow,
one point, we were up to, I think, 45,000 members.
it's a good size. This is definitely a very active group too, because obviously I'm active in it and share things and it's a great group to be part of. And I hope we see more of those popping up all over. Would be great.
I remember when I was in New York, this was probably about 10 years ago. I went to Daniel Boulud's restaurant, and it was my daughter who had made the reservation for my birthday. And she told whoever was on the phone that I was part of Ennio Foodies, that I was one of the
Hmm.
owners of Ennio Foodies. And I remember laughing at Sophia. I'm like, oh, that's so cute, honey. But I mean, I highly doubt Daniel Boulud is going to be familiar with this small food group in Cleveland.
Hmm.
I totally like, that's really sweet, honey. Yeah, thank you. But when we got there, it was total like red carpet treatment. They were like, we're so happy to have you, and
That's
uh,
great.
the chef would like you to try this, and they gave me a tour of the kitchen, and I got to meet, and I mean, I had no idea. And they said, the general manager at the time said, well, first of all, he had Jeremy Umansky's book on their coffee table for his foraging mushrooms that he did.
Hmm.
Um, Jeremy Umansky's being one of the biggest foragers in Cleveland, and of course he has the Larder deli
And
restaurant.
larder. Hmm.
Yeah, that's one James Beard nominated. But his book was on their table, and so they were familiar with the Cleveland food scene. And the general manager had said to me at the time, "We wish that we here in New York had a group like you guys."
Right.
Because it wasn't just about foodies, posting pictures of what they ate. It's a lot more than that. I mean, there's a whole archive of resources on. You can go and
Hmm.
find out how to make things, how to preserve things, how to cure things, where to go for this, where to go for that, your local farmers for this, your local purveyors for that. And then you can reach out to chefs and they respond.
Yeah. Exactly. Reaching out to chefs. I think it's an important part of that as well.
There's
Uh,
a nice communication with the chefs and the foodies in this group.
no, that's really cool. Which leads me into, one of my questions for you is talking about how we first met, our connection, and how you reached out. And I think people can be afraid of doing those things sometimes.
Yes.
And especially people who might have allergies or certain dietary restrictions. And my whole thing is don't be afraid, reach out. And really that's the core of that's how we met. And
Exactly.
we've had this relationship well since 2012.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So
you've seen my daughters grow up.
yes, exactly. So it's
So,
been turned into a great friendship. So, and
absolutely.
that's why you're here on the show. But like take me back to when you emailed me. It was so long ago.
So
Thank
there
you.
was a friend of mine from university who had gone to Chicago and had heard about the Homestead, which was your restaurant.
Right.
And she knew that she had food sensitivities, and she knew that I did as well. So we'd always talked about how difficult it's been in America to be able to comfortably go out to eat in restaurants when dealing with certain food allergies. And she emailed me right away and said, you have to check out this restaurant because this chef is amazing and he will tailor to any dietary restriction, anything that you have. And she told me about your rooftop garden and all about how you really were farm to table. And I mean, that I was sold. And so knowing me, me, I mean, I'm like, what? The worst he can say is no, I can't,
Right.
I'm pretty outgoing. So I'm like, hey, I'll give it a shot. I'll just reach out to him.
Yeah.
And you were so responsive. And but it was because of my friend Dawn that she told me to definitely go and to contact you, that you were very approachable. And yeah, so that's what led me to, and I would have done it anyway
Right.
because I want to enjoy. I mean, I love food way too much. So, I mean, I would have done it anyway because if I want to go there, I want to enjoy it. And the worst the chef can say is no.
Exactly. Exactly. That's why I think people will just approach it and talk about it, create a conversation. But I think, it goes into the neo foodies creating that conversation that I think sometimes people in certain platforms are afraid to talk about. And I think that provided a really good outlet. And I'm happy to hear that there's a new one you're starting in New Orleans, and hopefully this will continue because I think there's a lot of curiosity about not just allergies, but slow food movement, farm to table. I think it's evolving another way where people are actually gardening more at home, and they need to learn how to cook and prepare these things.
They're
So
starting to understand the repercussions of not knowing where their food came from.
yes,
There's
absolutely. So we're in a
huge
great time frame.
there's a huge rise in many stomach issues that are being linked to not even the specific food, but the preservatives that they're
Right.
using, and the long-term effects build up a histamine that our bodies are not able to. We can't tolerate these things. We're
Yeah.
not meant to. So people are becoming very, very, very conscious. They have to for their own health, especially as they're
Mhm.
getting older. I mean, our guts change as we get older anyway, and um, there's been a lot of talk in journals and research done that is linking how and where these foods are coming from and how they're affecting our bodies.
Exactly.
The chefs, restaurants have to be more aware, as well as the consumer, the shopper has to be more aware.
I think it's also chefs and their menus need to be a little bit more flexible. Or what I do now is when I'm designing a menu and say, if I'm not, coherently just an Asian restaurant, but say I use soy sauce somewhere, I'm using gluten-free soy sauce on
It tastes the
purpose.
same.
It tastes the same. People
It,
aren't going to know, they're not going to be able to taste through the difference, but then I can offer that value to other customers. And I try to do that across the board with a lot of my products.
yeah.
Or recipes that I do, and just make it very neutral, I should say. But it
And
doesn't affect the flavor or whatever it might be. But yeah,
no, there's a lot that's out there now in the market that a chef can use that you would not notice the difference at all. And I'm referring to
absolutely,
sauces and things like that.
especially sauces. Yeah,
Sauces. I mean, those you can interchange them and nobody would notice the difference.
absolutely.
And the chef and the restaurateur, they also have to educate the staff
Yeah,
because if a customer requests that gluten-free soy sauce, they got to make sure that that's what they're giving them, because
absolutely.
if they have a reaction, you're going to get the blame or
Hmm.
the owner's going to get the blame.
Hmm.
So it's, it has to be a well-oiled machine when dealing with food sensitivities. And a lot of the restaurants are very, very well knowledgeable and they're doing a great job.
Yeah, they've gotten a lot better over
Yeah.
the years, for sure, for sure. So let's go into we've said this word many times, foodies, and it gets kicked around a lot. What's your definition of a foodie?
Well, yeah, it has been kicked around a lot. I can't speak for everybody else, but I can speak for myself. To me, food is culture.
Hmm.
Food is art. As an artist myself, I look at chefs like you, and I view you guys as artists just as much if anything, you guys have it harder because it's subjective, just like a painting or a sculpture.
Hmm.
But you guys have to tap in
Absolutely.
way more senses than we do. For us, it's visual.
Hmm.
You have to tap into all of the senses, from
Hmm.
smell, sight, sound, texture, all of it.
Hmm.
People eat with their eyes first. So how you present it on the plate is important. Then there's the smell. Then there's the sound, the texture. Do you get that crunch, that creaminess? It's all,
Hmm.
and the memories come back.
Yes.
You get a memory of something, and
Memories and nostalgia.
it's nostalgia. I
Hmm.
mean, I've dropped a fork because I've eaten a tortellini that reminded me of my nonna's, hands down, and I'm like,
There you
that's the
go.
place I'm only going to go for that.
Exactly. And those connections and those stories are amazing.
I think that food is love. It's a way of putting yourself out there and allowing your passion to come through. And
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful. And so for me, I strive to find that
Hmm.
passionate food. Um, I love to eat. You know, in Italy, live to eat, not eat to live.
Yep.
So in my mind, it's like if I'm not having a good meal, I'm actually mad.
Hmm.
You know, so I look at it like a respect for the ingredients, a respect for the technique, how creative the chef is in combining flavors and textures that I never would have thought of and never experienced. It's like seeing a new painting for the first time, or
Mm.
even an old one where I'm noticing certain nuances that I never noticed before.
Right. New
It's
perspective or angle. Yeah.
perspective, exactly. I think a foodie is an appreciation for the arts, for the culinary arts all around. I think
That's
a
great.
foodie is someone that appreciates the passion, the time, the labor, the energy, the commitment that it takes to do what you guys do.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. I always say, a chef, and their menu it's an opinion. It's their interpretation or something
Right.
of how something should be. And maybe it's not for everybody, but I think people and foodies have to be open minded.
They do. They
Hmm.
really do. And I think that for any seasoned foodie who has gone to many restaurants multiple times, because let's say this one restaurant in particular has just all across the board everything that they love. So understand they should at this point understand that every restaurant is entitled to a bad night.
Hmm.
Every chef can be off a little bit. Something happens in the back of the house that puts the front of the house behind, and vice versa. They have to be flexible, that it's not always going to be perfect. So when a foodie gets on TikTok or Instagram or wherever, their blog, and is writing about a place, I'd like to think that they would bear in mind that it's not just about the foodie.
Hmm.
They have to be considerate of the restaurant and the staff
The whole
and
thing.
the whole. It's only responsible. Um, they also have to kind of watch their wording, because a lot of times, just in one phrase, you don't know how the rest of the world is going to interpret what you're saying. So
Mm.
you can be talking about a great restaurant, right? And then you start the sentence with, "Oh, they're a bit on the expensive side, but,"
Right.
you've just canceled out a group of people
Yep.
because you spoke about money first, cost first, and you already said they're expensive. They're not even going to look at the menu.
No.
And I just think that that's not very responsible. If we are, as food writers, are trying to encourage people to go out and frequent these restaurants and these establishments, let them decide the price. Let them go
Yeah.
check the menu out.
Yep.
Don't even mention the cost,
Absolutely. Yep.
because you can spend just as much as the a little bit more expensive place as you could at McDonald's, and people have done it.
Yep. Well, of course.
You know,
Oh, that's great perspective there. So now you're in New Orleans.
Yes.
How long you been there?
Going on 2 years now.
2 years now. So talk to me about the food scene. Obviously, I've heard a great scene. I was there a number of years ago and was hitting some of the top food lists. It's definitely legendary. There's some legendary places there,
Yeah.
Um,
There is no
I think the Commander's Palace, ate there.
still.
I think it was Two Sisters or Sisters.
Yes, the Court of Two Sisters. Yes.
Court of Two Sisters, I ate there. And then, I went to the Wolf. What was it? Turkey and the Wolf? Or
Well, mm-hmm.
great sandwich place.
He opened a breakfast place now called
Mhm.
Molly Rise and Shine, where he does really great breakfast sandwiches now
Ooh,
too.
nice.
Um,
Love breakfast sandwiches. In LA, we have a place called Egg Slut.
I've heard of them. I have heard of them.
Stuff. Yep.
Actually, it's Trisha from CLE Foodies.
Mm-hmm.
She has that food truck. She raves about them.
Yeah, it's a good place. Yeah.
But yeah, there are the legends. You've got Commander's Palace. You've got Antoine's. You've got Tujac. You have Clancy's, which is an uptown. It's in a very quaint little neighborhood, still kind of under the radar. Most people don't know about it, but those who know. It's fantastic, and it's very traditional. So you are going to get more of the heavier sort of
Right.
dishes. Then you have Emerald. He just reopened.
Okay.
With his son at the helm.
His son's a chef?
Yes. So
I didn't
remember when Eli was just a little behind, helping his dad in the kitchen when I first met Emerald right after Katrina, and now he's running the kitchen, and they just opened 34, which is basically Emerald's project. It's all Portuguese food based from his mom and his grandmother's recipes. And it just opened a few months ago, and it's doing really, really well. Emerald's already have numerous awards, and they're doing exceptionally well. There's a new oyster bar that opened in Jackson Square. You've seen a lot of my posts about Five's Bar.
No.
They are fantastic.
Love oysters.
Both the chef and one of the servers, Nick, both have their own oyster farms. So two oysters that are on the menu, you can only get at Five's. They're sourced only by them. Everything else is they source as locally as possible. They're probably one of the best beef tartars in the city, and their mixologists come from very esteemed places like Commander's Palace, like the Chandelier Bar at the Four Seasons.
Yep.
So and they make their own shrubs, their own bitters. Even their liquor or cocktails are as local as possible.
Local. Okay.
Ingredients are sourced locally. And it's a hole in the wall. I mean, you don't make reservation. Either you find a seat or you don't. And if you don't, wait. And then another oyster bar opened on Chapatula called Marie's. I haven't been there yet, but it's supposed to be really good. There's a big, huge rush of Asian fusion that's been popping up. We have Sun Chong, I believe they're called Sun Chong, which is Korean forward. And then you've got Bami Boys, which makes some of the best bami's in the city. There's a huge Vietnamese population here. So we have a really good selection of Vietnamese. I'd say Mexican is still kind of a little behind, as far as cuisine goes, and Italian. Sadly, I have to say that's probably one of the things, an authentic Italian.
Like red checker tablecloth?
No, more like something
a little more upscale.
Like you'd find in Tuscany.
More modern.
Yeah, more modern.
Okay.
So there is one chef here, Michael Gulata. He has Mofo and Maypop, which are very Asian forward, but he's Italian. And he just opened basically like his dream restaurant, which is an Italian restaurant focused on the regions of his mom and dad, which I believe his mom is from Puglia, or at least southern Italy. I think his father is from near my region in Abruzzo. But the restaurant is called Tena.
Hmm.
And I haven't been yet, which I already kind of got yelled at for not going yet. But I'm going to go. Everything so far looks spectacular on the menu. It really looks.
Good.
I've heard good things about Osteria Lupo. I've heard good things about them. But those are the only two as far as more modern Italian, like something that you would find in Italy, that I know about, that I would say, yeah, go there. I'm trying to think of anything else. Well, Toops, Isaac Toops, he's doing great with his Toops Meadery. I'd say the other standouts are Restaurant Revolution, Doris, Bayona, definitely. Susan Spicer's been killing it at Bayona. And then I love going over to Chemin à la Mer, the Four Seasons.
Okay.
Even though it's in a very high-end hotel, the restaurant is very low-key. The staff is fantastic. They have probably one of the best vegetarian dishes in the city I've ever had. Actually, in the city, but one I've ever had in my life.
Okay.
When Dawn came, the same Dawn that recommended you came to visit me, I took her there, and she had one of the best meals she'd ever had, and she's vegetarian.
Great. Good. So good list there for people to go check out when they go over to New Orleans.
But yeah, there's a big food scene here, definitely.
So that's great. Now, how has managing celiac disease changed your approach to food and cooking?
Well, I was diagnosed, years ago, and back then there wasn't a lot of information or resources for my situation. There's different levels of celiac, different levels of severity, and I was level 1, which meant I had a mild sensitivity, meaning that the kitchen did not need to completely isolate.
Oh, okay.
Cross-contamination. And if I took also the enzymes, I was okay.
Okay.
It was direct ingestion of quantities of gluten that I would have an effect. But it goes from 1 to 4, and it gets more severe as each level goes. And it basically just depends on the villi that are in your stomach, whether they're straight, bent, depending on how flat. Once they're down here, it means your body's not digesting gluten at all.
Now, are you still a 1, or does it change as you get older? Or
I'm still 1.
Okay.
If I were to ignore it and push it beyond the limits, I could be bumped up to 2.
Then it would get worse. Okay.
Then it would get worse because I'm leaving my body in a constant state of inflammation.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that would eventually, over time, alter then my gut by micro, ability. So it would eventually damage my villi to the point that it would end up staying like that.
Right.
I continue to take my enzymes.
So with your Italian heritage, what was it like discovering you had celiac disease? Especially with your love of pasta, pizza, and bread.
I cried. It was awful. I was like, that's it. I'm doomed to never have a good pasta ever again. My life is over. I mean, how do you take away bread, pizza,
right?
pasta?
It's in your veins. It's in our veins being Italian. It's our heritage, our blood right. But do you notice a difference going to Italy?
Oh, yeah.
Versus being in the States?
Absolutely. Italy was way ahead of the game long before America actually started getting serious about it. I never had a problem going to any restaurant in Italy at any time because I had celiac. They have already structured in their menus celiac options, and you do not taste the difference. I was in Trastevere, which is, for those who don't know, it's across the river from Rome.
In Rome, yep, love it. Used to hang out there.
I went to this pizza shop that because there's a whole resource. There's a whole website in Rome about where you can go eat for celiac.
What website is that?
I can't remember it now, but I will find it, and I'll
Yeah,
send
send that to me, and I'll attach it to the episode.
But so the reviews were coming in about this one pizza place because the father had a daughter with celiac, and he wanted to be able to make sure that his daughter could continue to enjoy pizza.
Mm-hmm.
So he opened this little restaurant. It took him years to perfect the right balance of corn to rice potato ratio.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, it's corn and rice,
Mm-hmm.
and the balance has to be just right, because if there's too much corn, it just tastes like polenta.
Right.
And if it's too much rice, it's gum. So you got to find that right balance. And then he even puts like a little flag on the ones that are, gluten free, so that everybody knows the difference. And honest to God, Sean, you could close your eyes, you would have not known the difference. It tasted just like a regular pizza al forno that you would have at any Roman pizzeria. And
Nice.
even begged him for the recipe. He wouldn't give it to me.
No. Oh, yeah. Well, hard-headed Italians.
He would not give it to me. But everything from his croquettes to the pizza, it was just unbelievable. And I will give you that restaurant, as well as another restaurant I went to with probably some of the best gluten-free pasta I ever had in Rome as well.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll take some notes.
But they also, so in Italy, it's different. When there was a spike in food allergies, particularly gluten sensitivity, it started, I believe, after Berlusconi lifted the GMO ban, um, where he allowed GMO wheat from America to come in.
We
And
did.
it
Oh,
was cheaper, because
right.
then they pay the farmers in Italy, who they harvest their wheat longer. They dry the wheat longer, so it's a more traditional old way of drying the wheat for the pasta, and it
Mm-hmm.
takes longer.
Mm-hmm.
But they do that so that the gluten has time to break down.
Right.
The GMO wheat has been thrust to harvest so quickly, it's highly condensed gluten, and it's never been broken down.
Yeah, that's good to know.
That's why the pastas that are like that have a more yellow color, as
Right.
opposed to almost a pasty, creamy color that the other, like the semolina pastas that you would see from Italy.
Mm-hmm.
The more yellow the dry pasta, the more condensed. It's not necessarily good for your stomach per se.
Okay, that's a good
But
tip.
anyway, after young kids started having food allergies, gluten allergies that they never had before. I mean, this was unheard of in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, it's an economic crisis when the possibility of having to eliminate an entire food group from the Italian culture.
Right.
So they were at the forefront of figuring out what they could do, or what was the problem, or what was the link. Now, there are genetic links. So they do believe that people with celiac, somewhere along their genetic line, someone in their family had some sort of food sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
We found out that my mom's father had bad stomach issues, digestive issues. And I remember growing up where there'd be days where he'd only be drinking tea. And I would ask my mother, is Nonna okay? She's like, yeah, he's just an upset stomach. But back then they didn't know how
They
to
didn't know.
they didn't know that. I found out that on my father's side, I had an aunt as well that had severe food allergies, lactose, and soy, and wheat. So it it can lay dormant, which is what they think was with me. It was always there, and it takes like a traumatic, stressful event that kind of brings it out, which I started having when my father passed away, and I gave birth to Sophia, my daughter. So it's kind of several big stressful events that had happened, and that's when my just things didn't seem right, and I started having more and more upset stomach. And when I went back to Italy, they were already addressing the issue. They were already looking into mushrooms as probiotics.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking, this was 20 years ago. So there was an apothecary in my town that was already had like newsletters on the benefits of lion's mane and mushrooms as probiotics to help the stomach. And that's when I started working with the Cleveland Clinic and a hospital in Bologna that put me on these enzymes. And now I take celiac and it works really great.
Okay.
But yeah, because they were already so far ahead of the game, they started giving, for people who were diagnosed with celiac, they gave, their employers gave them a separate stipend for groceries because gluten-free products are more expensive
Right.
than regular products.
Mm-hmm.
They also had pharmacies and grocery stores with aisles dedicated to just gluten-free. Everything from biscuits to flour to condiments to pasta to pizza dough, anything and everything you could imagine.
Hmm.
And then, like
Nice.
the restaurants were already developing a
Already
way,
doing it.
already doing it.
I mean, way ahead of the game. I feel like, a lot of places still here in the States are behind.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think they just have this stigma, and the chefs are hard-headed, and they don't want to think out of the box or take the effort, actually.
I
So,
know that in the beginning, when it sort of became this thing here in the United States, I do understand that there was sort of this, because I mean, I'm friends with a lot of chefs. I talk to you guys all the time. I'm always picking your guys' brains.
mhm,
And I think there was this consensus where it seemed to be more of a diet fad than an actual issue. And
right.
you guys didn't know how to sort out or weed out the ones who were saying that they, had a gluten sensitivity, when in reality they were just trying to cut carbs because they, wanted to lose weight.
Exactly. Yeah. There's definitely
Yeah,
a lot of that.
there's still a lot of that. And I don't think people understand what it takes for you guys to compose a menu and a dish, and to alter it takes a lot of time,
Yeah.
and it puts you guys a bit behind. So when you have the night rush and you've got 15 people claiming that they're gluten sensitive, and now you've got to alter maybe 10 different dishes, 5 different dishes,
Yeah.
it puts a strain on the kitchen.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
So I can understand the chefs being a little bit stubborn or resistant to want to really say, yeah, we'll accommodate everything, which is why I think it's more important for I guess for me to say to other people who legitimately have food sensitivities, contact the restaurant yourself.
Yeah.
Let them
Directly.
know in advance,
Hmm.
because they're more likely to then be aware that you're coming in and make plans ahead of time to accommodate you, rather than sit down and tell the server at that moment, hey, I'm celiac, and not only that, I'm level 4 celiac. Well, you can't,
Absolutely.
you can't dine here. There's no way for them
Yeah.
to even accommodate you. So you got nothing to lose. Contact the restaurant, tell the whoever answers that your issue, and if you could speak to the chef, or at least let him know, him or her, and at least, the worst they're going to say is no, they can't do it.
Yeah. Exactly. You
But
got nothing. You got nothing to lose.
then they'll know you're serious. They will respect your request, and then that doesn't put them behind come the time you're going to dine there, and you can enjoy it just like anyone else.
Exactly. So, growing up with an Italian heritage, what's one dish or cooking tradition that stands out and really shaped your love for food?
That's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, I've wow, oh gosh. Let me see.
Who was the big cook in your family? Your mom or your
My
dad or your,
mom,
your
my mom,
grandpa, your grandma,
my mom, my grandmother, my all the women in my family.
all
Although
the
my
women?
my dad my dad was known for making the whole pig, the porchetta.
Yeah, porchetta. Yeah.
So his side, we would do this porchetta feast at my cousin's farm, and we'd roast the whole pig, all day, and then you just basically tell them what piece you want. If you want a bit of the cheek,
Hmm.
if you want the ear, if you
The
want the
cheek's the
gut.
best part.
Cheek's the best part.
Yeah.
I love it. And then if you wanted it between bread or just in a pan, and if you want the extra crispy skin, and then we would do arrosticini,
Hmm.
with basically thin strips of lamb, veal, beef on a very thin little grill, and you just turn these little skewers
Yep.
continuously. It's basically meat on a stick. It's our
Yeah.
street.
Like spadini.
Yes, kind of like
Yeah.
spaghetti.
Yeah.
Arrosticini, they're from my region. They're called
Right.
arrosticini. And actually, I think there was one of your friends who had opened something like that in Chicago many, many years ago. I think you told me about him.
I don't remember. Long
Yeah,
time ago.
I'm like, oh my gosh, there's someone that's going to make arrosticini. I'm there. Then I'd say probably, so every Christmas we make what's called a timballo. Uh, and that is basically layers of crepes. It's our region's version of a lasagna.
Okay.
If you've ever seen The Big Night with Stanley Tucci and
Tucci. Yeah.
the guy from Monk,
Hmm.
um, Tucci wrote it, directed it, starred in it, and
That's right. They
basically
were chefs. They had their own restaurant.
that
Yeah.
whole menu is everything from Abruzzo, which is where Tucci's from.
Gotcha. Okay.
So they make the timballo. They make it in a. This was filmed to be in the 1950s, right after the war. So in the 1940s, 1950s, they made it a bit different. They made it in a dome. There was eggs, peas, because when meat was scarce, they had to find filling for the lasagna
Hmm.
and protein. So they'd use
Yep.
eggs and peas and stuff.
Eggs. My grandfather always made lasagna with hard-boiled eggs,
There, and
and
that was
that's how I make it.
very common go to
Yep.
when meat was scarce after the war.
Hmm.
So my mom's version, we have little meatballs, which me and my brother and my father, she basically give us all a big bowl of meat and trays, and she'd say, "Go to it."
Yep.
And the job was to roll these little meatballs forever. And she had veal, she had pork, and she had the meatballs. She had a bechamel, she had mozzarella, parmigiano, and ricotta. And she would stew the veal in the sauce, and then keep the bones in the sauce for the flavor. And basically, it takes like several days to make all the separate ingredients, and then you
Yeah.
put it all together. So it's, a layer of crepe, layer of sauce, cheese, one layer of meat, another cheese, layer of sauce, then another layer of crepe, and then you add the next meat, and then by the time it's done, it's like that big.
Yeah.
And that would be our every Christmas day. That's what we would have. Uh,
Nice.
and then gnocchi. For me, my childhood memories being in charge of rolling all the gnocchi. As
Gnocchi. Yep.
you know, that's what I love, and that's still one of my favorites. If someone asked me, Rita, what's your favorite pasta dish? It would either be gnocchi or our region's spaghetti alla chitarra that we roll over.
Yeah. And the guitar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gnocchi. For Christmas, it was always for Christmas gnocchi. We'd all make it at the big table.
Mm-hmm.
And then my grandfather had a California king bed, and he had the white sheet. It was like the pasta drying sheet. We
Uh-huh.
put it on his bed, and then we put all the gnocchi there to dry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was like the holiday activity for everybody before the big feast. Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, definitely gnocchi for me too.
Yeah. It's
That's
still my
good.
favorite. It's still my favorite.
So now, if you could host a dinner party with any artist, live or dead, or who would it be, and what would you serve them?
Mm. Caravaggio. Lots of meat.
Lots of meat.
Yeah, I'd say wild boar.
Ooh, yeah, wild boar's great.
I do wild boar for him, and
Okay.
lots of wine. Um, Degas would have to be French, so lots of cheese.
Cheese. Okay.
Yeah.
What was he known for?
Degas was known for his ballerinas. He was part of the Impressionist period
Okay.
with Monet and Manet.
Okay.
Uh, they had, I mean, those three were always at drinking absinthe somewhere. But
Yep.
I would probably do duck. Duck
Okay.
with the heavy beurre blanc for him.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And hmm. I don't know. I mean, I could go with the Italians, but I mean, that's a go-to. It'd have to be something very. I'd have to probably, if I was to pick Michelangelo, it would probably be a very nostalgic sort of farm pasta dish.
Right. Yeah,
Like,
I can see that.
you
Okay.
know, or maybe like a cacciatore, like a hunter's chicken, something rustic and
Yeah,
nostalgic,
definitely.
something like that.
For sure. Okay. I would pick Leonardo.
I was gonna say him. Now, what would you make for him?
I would make him. God, I'd probably make him just.
Steak.
I
A Fiorentinian steak. I could see him.
Yeah, Florentinian steak or a cacio pepe.
No, yeah.
Or like a carbonara.
Yeah.
Just a classic. I think a classic pasta of the time, maybe, or just a classic pizza. But yeah, Florentine steak and just good wine.
Of course. That's a gift.
So how do you think food and art can bring people together in ways other mediums can't?
Well, obviously, when I having my own art gallery, we had it catered.
Okay.
People are already being stimulated visually, seeing the art, and to have something that they're holding that looks just as visually stimulating and then tastes good, it goes hand in hand. I think anyone who appreciates art and culture has a deeper appreciation for good food.
Right. There's
There's
such a connection there to it.
a connection because you're going to see an artist, and like I said, we're in the same realm of it's subjective. What one person considers art, another person may consider garbage.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all on the eye of the beholder, whether they like it or not. And we put ourselves out there to be criticized.
Yeah.
And it's the same, like I said, for you guys, only you guys have it harder. So I think when people go to art shows or, actually go to art galleries and look at art, they have a deeper appreciation for what they are, more visual. So they're going to be more receptive to what's in front of them on their plate and how
Right.
they eat. And again, paint art itself too does also revokes a memory or nostalgia for some people. There are pieces that I've bought because they've reminded me of something,
Mm-hmm.
a place or a moment in my life, whatever. So I think there's a lot of similarities.
There's a lot of parallels there
Yeah, a lot
that
of
I don't think anything else can really compare to that necessarily.
no. I think
You know.
because what we do is so visual and what you do is so visual. That's the biggest parallel that correlates. And that's why, art shows, they're not necessarily concerned about the music or whatever. They're more concerned about the food that they're going to provide for the guests
Mm-hmm.
to enjoy the artwork. And I've done collaborations with chefs where, based on the theme of what exhibit I was doing, they made food tailored around the same color palette as the
That's
paintings.
cool. Yeah.
And we've entwined, basically it was a hybrid of the two. So the food itself was almost an identical to the painting that was on the wall.
I like that. I mean, when you think of pairings, you think of wine pairings, or
Hmm.
beer pairings, or whatever pairings you're thinking of. Art, you're pairing very similarly, but obviously due to a visual aspect. And
Exactly.
okay, that's really cool. I never thought of it that way.
And there's Dante, who Bacuzzi from Cleveland, who has his restaurant Dante, and I think you're familiar with it. Every year for the Italian Film Festival, he does an event where he does all the dishes from the region that film was made.
Oh, okay.
So the Italian film that would come out for that film festival every year, he does an event where all the dishes for that event are from the region where the film was made.
That's really cool. Yeah. Okay.
So when the big night came through town, he did the whole big night dinner. So yeah, so there's ways to incorporate film, but I have found that doing art with the food has been received very, very well.
That's good. Definitely, you can do events based off that. I don't think I've seen many events like that before.
No, and it's something that I'm collaborating with a couple of restaurants here. Um, Hopefully, in the next year, we'll have something up and running because there's a new gallery that just opened up. That's an extension of the auction house that I work with, and it's going to be all local artists. So I'm trying to put together, talking to them. They just opened, so we're going to see how the gallery goes. But if it gets its footing and does well, then later down the line, I know chefs that are already ready to do something like that.
Yeah,
Like, love the idea. It gives them
that's
the
a brilliant
flexibility to
idea. Yeah,
be as creative as they want.
absolutely.
So yeah, it's something that I want to get started down here and see how it goes. It was received very well back in Cleveland, so I'm hoping to do that here.
No, it sounds amazing. Definitely something I would want to be part of. So
Oh, I would
absolutely.
love to be a part of it. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm sure, well, you already know you could come down here and do a pop up with any of these
I
guys.
know
We're
we're gonna do something. We'll do
we're
something
waiting
soon.
for you to come down here.
I gotta get down there. For sure, for sure. So now looking back, how do you think your passions, art, food, Italian culture, uh, your celiac challenges have woven together to shape who you are today?
Wow. Um,
We gotta go deep now.
yeah, we gotta go deep.
We're coming to the end.
I think it's made me more appreciative of food and what goes behind where not from where it came from to how it's made to who did it to the labor, the love. Um, I've had to make adjustments in my life because of my issues, and I thought what would be something that would stop me has actually, in a way, been a good thing because I've had to expand trying things I never would have bothered to try before.
Hmm.
Eat more vegetarian dishes. I mean, like I'm really going to look at the vegetarian option. Why would I? You know,
Right,
but it's opened my mind to trying different foods and different cultures who are more uh, gluten free uh,
right.
forward. Where their natural dietary is not wheat.
There's not as much gluten. Yeah, so a
So
little more Asian.
yeah, and
Hmm.
Mexican too.
Mexican. Yeah,
You
they
know,
use a lot of corn. Yeah.
Latin American. So Peruvian,
Hmm.
Colombian, which are big down here. They're just things that I never really would have thought of. So it's expanded my palate as well.
No, that's great. That's awesome.
And then, of
Good, good.
course, it's helped me artistically because I love seeing a beautiful plate.
Right.
I mean, sometimes I want to shed a tear for how beautiful it is. Because in my mind, I'm looking at you guys. I'm like, you have a plate, and how you pick one ingredient. Either you start with the protein, or you start with the vegetable, or you start with and you build around and around and around and.
Hmm.
But then how you make it look so beautiful that you want to eat it.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm always in awe of what you guys do. I think it's just a tremendous gift.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, great conversation today, Rita.
Thank you for
It's
having me.
wonderful reconnecting to you. after so long, and definitely let's maintain our relationship. And I got to come visit you very, very soon.
You do.
Yeah, yes.
And
So
bring that lovely wife of yours.
yes, we'll do that. But yeah, thanks for stopping at the show. Everyone, please hit the links, our social medias, website, makingbeans.com, Instagram, Making Beans Podcast. Our newest episodes coming out every Thursday now. So you have something to look forward to for your week. We are also now on YouTube. We're on Apple Podcasts and now Spotify. So please check us out.
All right.
So we'll see you next time.
Absolutely.
Or we'll talk soon.
Absolutely.
And everybody will see you next time.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Cooking up stories, making dreams. Talk about life, sharing themes. Sip on wisdom, enjoy the ride. Recipes and culture all in stride. Making beans, we break it down. Food and drink on every round. From kitchen tales to heartfelt talks. Spicing up your daily walks. Hospitality, we keep it real. Chefs and brews, they'll make you feel. Every dish, every drink. More than just what's in the sink. Making beans, we break it down. Food and drink on every round. From kitchen tales to heartfelt talks. Spicing up your daily walks. Life is flavorful of zest. Join the table, be our guest. Culture stories, new cuisine. Every episode like a dream. Ooh, 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 ooh. Making beans, we break it down. Food and drink on every round. From kitchen tales to heartfelt talks. Spicing up your daily walks. Life is flavorful of zest. Join the table, be our guest. Culture stories, new cuisine. Every episode like a dream.